Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are looking at a story that, frankly, feels like it was written by a screenwriter.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, a screenwriter who was told to come up with the most implausible business thriller possible. And then the producer came back and said, yeah, it's good. Dial it up another 20%.
Right, make it crazier.
It's a story about a man who explicitly stated, and this is an exaggeration, he wanted to be the world's first trillionaire, not billionaire.
Trillionaire, which is a number so large the human brain, it has trouble actually visualizing it.
Exactly. And he didn't stop there. He mused about living forever, and this is my personal favorite. He genuinely had aspirations to become president of the world.
A position that, and I feel compelled to point out, does not exist.
Right.
There is no job opening for that.
Details. But look, the reason we are obsessing over this story isn't just because the ambitions were so wild. It's the gap between those ambitions and what actually happened.
A chasm.
It's a chasm, yeah. We are tracing a trajectory that goes from claiming to elevate the world's consciousness to a reality involving, well, a marijuana-stuffed cereal box on a private jet and one of the most spectacular high-velocity corporate implosions in the history of capitalism.
We are, of course, talking about the saga of Adam Neumann and WeWork, but I think it is crucial to set the stage for why we're doing this deep dive today, February 6, 2026.
Yes.
Because if you just watch the news back in 2019 or even 2023, you might think this story just ended, with the crash.
Right. If you haven't been glued to the business pages lately, you probably assume WeWork is dead, buried, and maybe turned into a spirit Halloween store somewhere.
Right, but it's not.
That'd be close.
Far from it. The company has actually emerged from bankruptcy, it has new owners, and believe it or not, it's actually profitable. But the twist, the real reason we are here, is that Adam Neumann didn't just fade away into the sunset with his billions.
No.
He is back. He has a new company called Flow, and he is effectively competing with the monster he created.
It is the ultimate business soap opera. So today we have a stack of sources here. Biographies, court filings from the bankruptcy, the infamous S1 document that started the fire, and of course media coverage of his new ventures right up to this year, 2026.
Our mission today is to unpack the unicorn, the fall, and the surprising flow into a second act.
It is, at its core, a case study in charisma, total governance failure, and the commodification of community.
That's the perfect word for it.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We have to start with the man himself,
Yeah.
who is Adam Neumann, because you don't just wake up one day and decide you want to be president of Earth without some interesting backstory.
Not at all. And to understand WeWork, you cannot just look at the real estate market in New York. You have to go back. You have to look at Israel in the 1980s and 90s.
Okay.
Neumann was born in Beersheba in 1979. His childhood was defined by severe instability. His parents divorced when he was 7, and he was constantly moving. By the time he was 22, he had lived in 13 different homes.
13 homes by age 22. That's chaotic.
It creates a specific psychology, right? When you are always the new kid, you have to be incredibly adaptable. You have to learn to charm people and charm them quickly because you don't have the luxury of long-term relationship building.
You need to be magnetic immediately.
Immediately, you have to walk into a room and own it. But the most critical piece of the puzzle, the thing that appears in almost every analysis of his philosophy, is the time he spent living on a kibbutz as a teenager.
Okay, for the listeners who might only know the word from, crossword puzzles, can we define what a kibbutz actually is?
Sure. So historically, a kibbutz is a collective community in Israel. It started with agriculture. It's based on socialist communal principles.
So everyone works together.
Everyone works together. You eat in a communal dining hall. Children often sleep in communal houses. Income is shared. It is the ultimate expression of we over I.
It's a socialist utopia in theory.
In theory, yes. But for Neumann, it was this incredibly formative emotional experience. He later explicitly stated that he wanted to replicate that feeling of togetherness he felt there because he thought it was completely lacking in the West, specifically in the U.S.
Okay, but this is where my brain starts to hurt.
Go on.
He takes this socialist communal living model and he hyper-capitalizes it. He decides to package that feeling of belonging and sell it for a premium per square foot.
That is the central irony that drove the entire business. That's the whole thing right there. WeWork was essentially selling a non-capitalist feeling friendship, belonging, community using a hyper-capitalist structure.
It's brilliant.
It is. He identified a loneliness epidemic in the emerging freelance economy and realized people would pay extra just to feel like they were part of a tribe. He was selling a cure for loneliness.
Which is a powerful product. But before he was this, guru of community, he was just a guy trying to make a buck in New York. He served in the Israeli Navy first, right?
Yes, he was a junior officer, a captain in the Navy. He brings that up a lot to establish his leadership bona fides. But he also struggled immensely with severe dyslexia. He couldn't really read or write until 3rd grade.
I want to pause on that for a second. Dyslexia often forces people to develop other skills, doesn't it? If you can't rely on reading the manual, you have to rely on people, on your charm.
Precisely. Many, many successful entrepreneurs are dyslexic. It often forces you to become an excellent oral communicator or storyteller. You learn to delegate the details because the details are literally difficult for you to process. You become the vision guy out of necessity.
So he lands in NYC. He attends Baruch College. Drops out, by the way, though he did, to his credit, go back and finish his degree in 2017.
After he was already a multi-billionaire, yeah.
Right. And he starts trying to launch businesses. And this is where we find my favorite early venture of his, crawlers.
Ah, yes, the crawlers.
I did a double take when I saw this in the notes. This was his big idea before Office Space. Baby clothes.
It was. Baby clothes with built-in knee pads.
Because babies are injuring their knees. Is that a thing?
That was the premise. He was absolutely convinced that babies were suffering from knee trauma while crawling around.
Has a single baby in human history ever complained about knee trauma? They're practically made of rubber.
That is exactly the point. He was solving a problem that didn't exist. The tagline was something like, just because they don't tell you doesn't mean they don't hurt.
Wow.
It's classic Neumann logic, even back then. Create a narrative of a hidden problem and then sell the only solution.
And he also tried to sell women's shoes with collapsible heels, right?
Yes, high heels that could retract and turn into flats. Again, not a terrible idea in theory, but the engineering was a disaster. He was just throwing ideas at the wall, desperate to hit it big. But the pivot happened in 2008.
The financial crisis.
The financial crisis. And he met Miguel McKelvey through a mutual friend.
And Miguel is the other half of this equation. He's often described as the quiet architect to Adam's loud salesman.
Exactly. Miguel was trained as an architect. He was the one who could actually visualize how to carve up a physical space, how to make it feel cool. They were in the same building, and Adam noticed all these empty floors.
And his mind just starts racing.
He goes to the landlord and pitches this idea. They start a company called Green Desk in Brooklyn.
This was the precursor to WeWork.
Right. It's 2008. The financial world is collapsing. Lehman Brothers is gone. People are getting laid off left and right. And suddenly, there is a flood of freelancers. People who used to have an office now have a laptop in a coffee shop.
And Neumann and McKelvey see this. They start Green Desk as an eco-friendly co-working space.
Which is funny because eco-friendly in 2008 usually just meant we reuse some wood and the lights are CFLs.
Pretty much. But it worked, right? It was profitable.
It worked. It was profitable almost immediately. But the landlords they were working with, they wanted them to just stick to Green Desk, maybe open another one in Brooklyn. Adam and Miguel wanted to build a global brand.
So in a move that kind of foreshadows everything, they sold their stake in Green Desk back to their landlord.
For just a few $100,000. And they used that cash to fund the big idea, WeWork.
Which launched in 2010 in Soho, Manhattan. Now, usually when you start a business, especially in a recession, you scrape by, you count every penny. But Neumann had this ability to convince people to bet big on him immediately.
It's his superpower.
Their first major investor, a real estate guy named Joel Schreiber, put in $15 million for a 33% stake.
I want to emphasize how insane that is. $15 million for a third of a company that barely existed, run by a guy whose previous hit was knee pad pants for babies. It valued the company at roughly $45 million right out of the gate.
How? How do you convince someone to do that? What is in that pitch?
It's the conviction. Absolute, unwavering, almost religious conviction. Neumann doesn't pitch, he preaches. He made investors feel like the train was leaving the station, and if they didn't get on right now, they would miss the next Apple or Google.
And to be fair, in those early days, the product actually worked. It was cool.
It was. The early WeWorks were genuinely great. They had free beer on tap, glass walls, nice lighting, a sense of energy. It was way better than a Starbucks or your kitchen table.
And then they get a huge piece of validation in 2011. PepsiCo.
Yes. PepsiCo placed a few employees in a WeWork location.
That feels like a major turning point.
It was a massive validation. It proved that this wasn't just for, a couple of guys in hoodies building an app. Big, boring Fortune 500 corporations wanted a piece of this energy.
And those Pepsi employees acted as scouts, right? Rubbing shoulders with startups, seeing what was new.
Exactly. It gave WeWork credibility to go to landlords and say, see, we attract the big guys, not just risky freelancers. Give us your whole building.
So you have the proof of concept, the engine is running. Now we get to the part where they don't just add fuel to the engine, they pour rocket fuel into it.
A whole tanker truck of it.
From 2014 to 2019, this company goes supernova. We're talking about a valuation jumping from $5 billion to $47 billion.
And you cannot talk about this era, this explosion of capital, without introducing the other main character of this tragedy, Masayoshi Son.
Masa, the CEO of SoftBank.
The man with the $100 billion vision fund. You have to understand Masa's psychology to understand WeWork's rise. He was the guy who invested early in Alibaba and made a fortune. He believes in the singularity, in AI, in companies that grow faster than physics should allow. He's a gambler on a global scale.
There was that famous story about their first meeting. Adam gets 12 minutes in the back of a car, right?
It was supposed to be a short car ride. Adam gives him the tour of the WeWork headquarters. At the end of it, Masa invites him into his car, pulls out an iPad, and sketches a deal right there on the spot.
For how much?
For $4.4 billion.
After a 12-minute tour.
But the most important part, the part that changed everything, is what Masa said to him. He looked at Adam and told him that WeWork wasn't thinking big enough. He said, and I'm quoting here, "In a fight, the crazy guy always wins. You were not crazy enough."
Imagine telling Adam Neumann, a man who wants to be president of the world, that he isn't crazy enough.
It's like telling a pyromaniac that the fire is a little too small.
It was pure validation for every single one of his wildest impulses.
Completely. SoftBank ended up pouring over $10 billion into WeWork over time. This created a specific economic distortion field around the company. It's called blitzscaling.
Okay, what's that?
The idea, popularized in Silicon Valley, is that you prioritize speed over efficiency. You intentionally lose money on every customer, but you grow so fast that you wipe out all competitors and own the entire market. Then, theoretically, once you have a monopoly, you raise prices and finally make a profit.
But to do that, you have to burn cash at an unbelievable rate.
An unbelievable rate. In 2018 alone, WeWork lost over $2 billion. That's almost $6 million a day. They were lighting money on fire to open locations in London, Tokyo, Rio, everywhere. They were trying to be on every street corner like Starbucks.
And as the money poured in, the cult of we started to get really, really weird.
Yeah.
It stopped being about desks. It started to be about encompassing every second of your existence.
Total mission creep. They launched WeLive, which was their communal apartment concept. They had Rise by We, which was a gym and spa.
And my personal favorite, WeGrow.
The school.
A private elementary school inside the headquarters for children age 3 to grade 4. And it was run by Rebecca Neumann, Adam's wife.
Rebecca is a crucial figure here, too. She's Gwyneth Paltrow's cousin, deeply spiritual, into Kabbalah, and she brought this very new age language into the boardroom. The mission of WeWork officially changed from renting desks to elevating the world's consciousness.
Which is hard to measure on a quarterly earnings call.
Impossible. And they started buying things that made absolutely no sense. They bought a majority stake in a wave pool company called Wavegarden.
Wait, why? Why does a landlord need a wave pool company?
The official justification was that surfing is a community activity, but in reality, it was because Adam liked to surf. That's pretty much it. They bought Meetup, the social gathering platform. They bought a coding academy called the Flatiron School. They were desperately trying to prove to the world that they were a tech company, like Amazon or Google, not a boring real estate company.
That's the grift, isn't it? Convincing the world you're a tech platform when you're actually just subleasing office space.
That was the entire game. Tech companies get 20x revenue valuations. Real estate companies, if they're lucky, get 2x. The whole $47 billion number was based on pretending they were tech.
And with this expansion came this incredible, almost paternalistic level of control. In 2018, Neumann banned all employees from expensing meals with pork, poultry, or red meat.
The no meat policy.
For what reason?
He said it was for the environment. And sure, meat has a high carbon footprint. But think about the dynamic. You are the CEO, and you are telling your accountants and your sales reps what they're allowed to eat for lunch if they want to get reimbursed. It's a level of personal control that really crosses the line into cult-like behavior.
Meanwhile, the culture inside the company wasn't exactly a monastery.
Far, far from it. The sources we looked at describe a frat boy culture on steroids. We are talking about mandatory tequila shots during job interviews.
Yeah.
Not at all. He would walk around with a bottle of Don Julio 1942, and if he offered you a shot and you didn't take it, that was a bad sign. And then there were the mandatory summer camp festivals.
How was that?
Thousands of employees were flown from all over the world to fields in the UK or upstate New York for 3 days of partying, music, and free-flowing alcohol.
It sounds fun if you're 22, but I'm guessing it was an absolute nightmare for the HR department.
A total nightmare. In October 2018, a former director of culture filed a lawsuit alleging she was sexually assaulted at company events. She described a culture where alcohol was just everywhere, completely unchecked. There were multiple suits regarding gender pay gaps, age discrimination. It was a chaotic, high-testosterone environment masked by this soft, new-agey language of love and community.
So you have this chaotic, high-spending, party-fueled rocket ship. It's early 2019. The valuation is at its peak, $47 billion. They are arguably the hottest startup in the world. And they decide, let's take this thing public. They file for an IPO.
And that is the moment the music stopped. Cold.
August 2019, the release of the S-1 filing. For our listeners, the S-1 is the big document a company files with the SEC to list on the stock market. It's supposed to be a boring technical brochure saying, here are our financials, here are our risks, please buy our stock.
Instead, this document read like the diary of a madman.
Let's open it up. First of all, the dedication. You mentioned it earlier.
Most S1s are dedicated to, our shareholders or our amazing team. This one was dedicated to the energy of we. And the first sentence of the document was, we dedicate this to the energy of we greater than any one of us, but inside each of us.
That is not something a Goldman Sachs banker wants to read.
No, they want to see numbers. And when they finally got to the numbers, it was even worse. But the real horror show was the corporate governance section. This is where investors actually started screaming.
Let's break down the governance nightmares, because this is where the scam accusations really started to fly. Let's start with the big one.
The trademark issue. It's almost comical. So the company decided to rebrand from WeWork to the We Company to reflect its expansion into living and schools and wave pools.
Okay, rebranding. Standard corporate stuff.
Except Adam Neumann personally owned the trademark for the word we through a private holding company. He had bought it before the rebrand. And then the We Company paid him $5.9 million to license the rights to use that word.
Hold on, let me get this straight for the listener. He was the CEO. He decided to change the company name to a word that he personally owned. And then he made the company pay him nearly $6 million for the privilege of using the name that he chose.
You've got it. It was peak audacity. It signaled to everyone on Wall Street that he viewed the company as his personal piggy bank. He was just extracting cash from the investors right in front of their faces.
Did he get away with it?
No. The public outcry was so intense that he eventually returned the money. But the fact that he thought he could get away with it in the first place, it terrified them.
And it wasn't just the name, there were the buildings, too.
Right. The related party transactions. This was another huge red flag. Neumann personally bought commercial buildings, often using lines of credit secured by his WeWork stock, and then he would lease those buildings back to WeWork.
So he was the landlord and the tenant.
He was on both sides of the deal. If WeWork paid really high rent on a building, WeWork, the company, lost money, but Adam Neumann, the landlord, made a fortune personally. It's conflict of interest 101.
Unbelievable. What else is in there?
The stock structure. This is the key to his power. We mentioned governance. Neumann had set it up so that his shares gave him 20 votes for every 1 vote a normal shareholder would get after the IPO.
20 to 1.
20 to 1. It meant that even if he sold off half his financial stake, he could never be fired. He had total dictatorial control over the company forever. He couldn't be removed by the board.
And there was a clause in there about his wife, right?
Yes. The succession clause. The S-1 stipulated that if Adam died, his wife Rebecca would be on the committee to choose his successor.
Like a monarchy, passing control through the family.
Exactly like a monarchy. And public market investors, we're talking pension funds, mutual funds, the people who manage your 401k, they looked at this structure and said, absolutely not. We are not investing in a dictatorship.
And while the entire financial world is reading this S-1 and freaking out, a story breaks in the Wall Street Journal that just perfectly encapsulates the madness.
The cereal box incident.
This is the anecdote that I think really turned the tide of public opinion. It painted him not as a brilliant, eccentric visionary, but as an unstable liability.
Completely. Set the scene for us.
Okay, so it's the summer of 2018. Neumann and his friends charter a Gulfstream G650, a top-of-the-line, $60 million private jet to fly from the U.S. to Israel.
The best plane money can buy.
On the flight over, they're smoking so much marijuana that the smoke is thick in the cabin. According to the reporting, the flight crew had to put on their oxygen masks because they were worried they'd fail a drug test from inhaling the secondhand smoke.
That's just dangerous. Forget everything else.
It's insane. So they land in Israel. Adam and his entourage get off and go to their party. But the flight crew stays behind to clean the plane for the return trip. And what do they find stuffed in a compartment?
A cereal box.
A cereal box. And it's not full of Cheerios. It's stuffed full of a large amount of weed.
Just left there in the cabin.
Now, this is an international flight. This crosses the line from partying into, international drug traffic.
That's a felony. A serious one.
Exactly. So the owner of the jet gets a frantic call from the pilot. The owner realizes that if this plane tries to leave Israel and gets searched by customs, the plane could be seized, the pilot's arrested. So he orders the plane to return to the U.S. immediately empty.
So Adam is stranded in Israel.
Yes. The CEO of a supposed $47 billion company is stranded because he left his drugs in a cereal box on a rented jet. It just showed a complete lack of discipline, a total lack of judgment. It showed he thought the rules simply didn't apply to him.
And when you combine the shocking financials, the insane governance issues, and this kind of reckless personal behavior, the IPO just completely collapsed.
The valuation crashed from $47 billion to, the bankers tried to salvage it at maybe $20 billion, and people were whispering $10 billion. But in the end, the IPO was pulled entirely. They ran out of cash.
And in September 2019, the board led by SoftBank, who had the most to lose, finally decides, we have to cut the head off the snake.
They moved to oust him. But, and this is the part that still drives people crazy, because of those super voting shares we talked about, they couldn't just fire him. They had to buy him out.
The golden parachute.
This wasn't a golden parachute. This is a platinum, diamond-encrusted parachute. To get him to leave and give up his voting control, SoftBank put together an exit package initially valued at nearly $1.7 billion.
$1.7 billion for essentially breaking the company.
It included SoftBank buying about $1 billion of his shares, refinancing his massive personal debts, and get this, a $185 million consulting fee.
They paid him $185 million to consult on what? How to run a company into the ground. Did they ever actually call him for advice?
I highly, highly doubt it. That was just a bribe. Is the price to get him to walk away quietly and give up the keys. Now, that deal was renegotiated later. There were lawsuits, and the final number he got was lower, but he still walked away with hundreds of millions in cash. He failed, and he became a billionaire because of it.
An unbelievable outcome.
So Neumann is out. He's rich. He's in his mansion. But WeWork, the company, the thousands of employees, the landlords, they are still there. And we move into what I'd call part 4, the wilderness years.
2020 starts. SoftBank takes control. They bring in a new CEO, Sandeep Mathrani. He's a veteran real estate executive. He's the anti-Adam. Serious, boring, focused on the balance sheet. His only job is to stop the bleeding.
And then, just as he's trying to perform surgery, the universe decides to play a cruel joke.
COVID-19 hits.
It's the worst possible timing. Think about it. WeWork's entire business model is based on density, packing people into small glass offices, sharing kitchens, sharing air, sharing everything. And suddenly the governments of the world say, stay 6 feet apart, work from home.
It was an extinction-level event for their business model.
The offices emptied out. I remember walking past WeWork's in 2020 and 2021. They were just ghost towns, lights off.
They immediately stopped the free beer. They started closing locations. They laid off thousands and thousands of people. But they had a massive fundamental problem baked into their books.
Leases.
The leases. They had signed 15-year leases on hundreds of buildings back when rents were at their peak. But their customers, the tenants, were on flexible month-to-month contracts.
That is the fundamental flaw of the model, the asset-liability mismatch. You owe the landlord for 15 years, but your customer only owes you for the next 30 days.
Exactly. When all the customers canceled their memberships, WeWork was still on the hook for billions in rent. They were bleeding cash at an apocalyptic rate. But surprisingly, they managed to go public anyway in 2021.
How? I mean, who would buy this stock in the middle of a pandemic when nobody was in an office?
They used a SPAC.
a special purpose acquisition company. We saw a lot of these during the pandemic bubble. Can you explain the mechanics briefly for our listeners?
Sure. Think of a SPAC as a backdoor IPO. A group of investors lists a blank check company on the stock market. It has no business, just a big pile of cash. Then that public shell company goes and merges with a private company, in this case, WeWork. It's a faster, easier way to go public with less scrutiny than a traditional IPO.
So WeWork merged with a SPAC called BOX,
Yes, and it valued WeWork at $9 billion.
which is a long, long way down from $47 billion. But it's still $9 billion.
It is. And more importantly, it gave them access to a fresh injection of cash from the SPAC. They desperately needed that money just to survive the pandemic. But even that wasn't enough. The debt load was just too heavy. The old, expensive leases from the Adam era were like an anchor dragging the ship to the bottom of the ocean.
And so, we get to the inevitable conclusion of this first act, November 2023.
WeWork files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
Now, bankruptcy sounds like death to most people, like going out of business, but Chapter 11 is different, right? It's a tool.
Correct. Chapter 11 is reorganization, not liquidation. It's a court-supervised process where you get to pause your debts and, crucially, renegotiate your contracts. For WeWork, it was a strategic weapon. It allowed them to go to all their landlords across the world and say, look, we are legally rejecting this lease. You can take the keys back and have an empty building, or you can cut our rent by 50%.
It was a way to purge all the toxic, overpriced leases from the Adam Neumann era.
Exactly. They shed billions in future rent obligations. SoftBank had to write down almost their entire investment. Masayoshi Son admitted on an earnings call that he lost billions and that his judgment was flawed. The unicorn was, for all intents and purposes, officially dead.
Was it? Because here we are, it's February 2026, and WeWork is still here. My local WeWork is open.
It is. And this brings us to the part of the story that often gets ignored, the resurrection.
WeWork emerged from bankruptcy in May 2024. Who owns it now? It's not SoftBank anymore, is it?
A company called Yardi Systems is now the majority owner.
I've never heard of them.
And that's probably a good thing. They are a massive, profitable, and frankly boring back-end software company for the real estate industry. They provide the software that landlords use to manage their buildings and track rent. They took a 60% stake. SoftBank is still there with about a 20% stake, but they're not in charge.
And how are they doing this new, boring WeWork?
Surprisingly well. Because they used the bankruptcy process to cut all the bad locations, they closed about 160 unprofitable spots. They are now running a much leaner ship. By the fourth quarter of 2024, the company actually hit break-even EBITDA.
EBITDA. Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Basically, their day-to-day operating profit.
Right. And by the first quarter of 2025, they were actually EBITDA positive. The core business model, flexible office space, actually works. People want it. The demand is there, especially in a hybrid work world. It was just the insane execution, the crushing debt, and the hubris of the first iteration that broke it.
So under-disciplined, boring management, it's a totally viable
A
business.
totally viable business.
But we have to talk about the plot twist that happened during the bankruptcy. This is the moment where I actually laughed out loud when I read the news reports from 2024.
An attempted buyback, February 2024.
Adam Neumann, the man who brewed the company, the man they paid over $1 billion to leave,
Yeah.
he tried to buy it back.
He did. While the company was at its most vulnerable, in bankruptcy court, he swooped in with a bid of over $500 million to regain control of WeWork.
The audacity. It's just,
Yeah.
It's breathtaking. I broke it, you paid me to leave, now it's on sale for pennies on the dollar because I broke it, so I'll just buy it back cheap.
It is stunning chutzpah. He was backed by a big hedge fund, third point. He argued that the current management didn't understand the magic of the brand. He wanted to bring the vibe back.
And what did the company and its creditors say?
They essentially ghosted him.
Yeah.
Publicly, they said they'd review all offers, but privately, the reports say they viewed him as radioactive. They did not want him anywhere near the controls again. They eventually went with the much safer Yardi deal instead.
Probably a wise bet. But Adam Neumann is not the type of person to just sit on a beach and count his money. He didn't get WeWork back, so he decided to build something else. And that brings us to his second act.
Enter Flow.
Okay, let's look at Flow. This is his current venture in 2026. What is it?
Initially, the pivot was to residential real estate. If WeWork was community for work, Flow was supposed to be community for living.
So WeWork 2.0.
Pretty much, but on a much bigger scale. He started going on a buying spree, buying thousands of apartment units in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Atlanta, Nashville. The idea is the same. Renting an apartment sucks. It's a lonely transactional experience. The landlords are unresponsive. Flo wants to create a branded living experience.
What did that mean in practice?
It means there's an app, there are community events, neighbors actually know each other. It's the WeWork playbook applied to where you sleep.
And crucially, he got funding. Massive funding.
This is the part that shocked the entire tech and venture capital world. In 2022, Andreessen Horowitz, also known as A16s, one of the most prestigious VC firms in the world, wrote their largest single check ever to a single founder.
Not much.
They invested roughly $350 million, and it valued Flo at over $1 billion before it had even opened its doors to a single tenant, before it had a product.
Okay, stop. After the S1, after the cereal box, after the bankruptcy, after the $10 billion write-down by SoftBank, how does Mark Andreessen, a guy who literally invented the modern web browser, look at Adam Neumann and say, here's $350 million?
It speaks to a very powerful theory in venture capital called founder mode. Andreessen wrote a whole blog post justifying the investment. He argued that Adam is a singular visionary. He said that Adam fundamentally redefined the commercial office space. And sure, he made mistakes, but he has the energy and the vision to do it again for the home.
They're betting that the crazy is a feature, not a bug.
That's exactly it. They're betting he's learned his lesson about governance, or more cynically, they're betting that he'll just make them a ton of money before he crashes the plane again.
That is the billion-dollar question. But Flo didn't stick to just apartments, did it?
No. In late 2024, the rivalry reignited. Neumann announced that Flo would launch a direct rival to WeWork, offering flexible office space within their residential buildings.
So he is competing head-to-head with the company he founded, using the money he made from leaving it, backed by new investors who think he can do it all again.
Precisely. And he's doing it with that signature eccentric flair. In 2024, he also bought a magazine called Whalebone, a cool little surf and culture magazine based out in Montauk, and he renamed it Flo Trip.
Flo Trip.
Flo Trip. It's a marketing vehicle for the brand. It's full of beautifully shot articles about wellness, community, travel, and surfing. It's the we vibe all over again, just with a new logo.
So here we are in early 2026. Let's recap. Adam Neumann is back on the billionaire list. Forbes estimates his net worth at around $2.2 billion. His company, Flo, is operating thousands of apartments and now office spaces in places like Florida and even Saudi Arabia.
And at the same time, WeWork is operating separately, it's profitable, and it's run by a boring software company. It's like a split reality.
It raises a really difficult question about our economic system, doesn't it? Was Adam Neumann a visionary who was just right too early? Or was he a brilliant salesman who sold dollar bills for 50 cents?
I think the answer might be both. He clearly identified a real hunger for community in modern life. He saw that the way we work was changing before almost anyone else did. He forced the entire staid real estate industry to modernize.
He did. If you walk into a boring office building today and there's a lounge with nice coffee and a couch, that is because Adam Neumann's influence forced them to compete. He set a new standard.
But he also proved that community is incredibly hard to scale. You can't mass-produce a genuine feeling of belonging like you can mass-produce iPhones. At some point, it becomes fake.
And he proved, maybe more than anyone else, that in the modern economy, failing big is actually much safer than failing small.
That is the so what for our listener. If you borrow $50,000 from a bank to start a bakery and you fail, the bank takes your house, you're ruined. But if you burn through $10 billion of venture capital, you get a golden parachute, you keep your mansions, and Andreessen Horowitz gives you another $350 million to try again.
It's the fail-up phenomenon. It suggests that confidence, the pure, unadulterated ability to tell a compelling story, might be the single most valuable asset in the 21st century economy, maybe more valuable than actual competence.
In the short term, absolutely. The market rewards great storytellers. It rewards people who can create a reality distortion field and suspend disbelief. Adam Neumann is arguably the greatest salesman of his generation. The fact that the first WeWork collapsed doesn't change the fact that he sold the dream effectively enough to become a billionaire.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we leave you with this image. WeWork survived. It shed its charismatic, reckless founder and became a healthy, normal business it grew up. But Adam refused to grow up. He just found a new playground.
And a new, even bigger allowance.
Exactly. And it forces us to ask, does failure actually matter anymore if you feel big enough? Or is catastrophic failure just a stepping stone for the 0.01%?
A provocative thought to end on.
Something to mull over on your commute. And hey, if you happen to be listening to this in a co-working space right now, do me a favor. Go to the kitchen. Check the cereal boxes.
Just to be safe.
Just to be safe. You never know. Please check the show notes for all our sources, including that wild S1 filing and the breakdown of the flow deal. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.